All right, everybody, welcome back to RCT Creations for another RCT Construction episode, and we are returning to Funland, believe it or not, for another coaster edition, back-to-back coaster editions for this park, actually. We are in August 24th, year 3, but this would actually put us in January of 2004. The 2003 season is complete, and after rezoning staff, it was very, very successful, but this was a planned edition before that in the first place. Before we jump too far in, just want to cover a couple additions that we've had. So if we go over here, this is formerly where the Ring of Fire entrance would have been. And then if we go over here, we took down the merchandise stand and cleared off where the Ring of Fire station was. The exit path is still there. It is walled off, but is still there. And then the winch house, or whatever you want to call it, is also still there. And if we go over here, we have a new merchandise stand across from Electric Eel, which actually did not appear in the POV. So pretty new building there. As you can see, really good time if you were to visit Funland. But let's go ahead and jump on into it. We are going to be using the Orca Expedition paths today, and we are going to be building the second Premier Rides liquid coaster in the Fun Corporation chain. We've got quite a bit of space here, and this won't be... Originally, I was kind of wanted it to be really big, but and this is one, just to be clarified before I get started, this is one I did design. I saved a separate copy of Funland just to kind of get the design finished in a spot where I liked it, and went from there. So this is a pre-designed ride. I'm not building this one fresh. I have the layout already in mind, and it ended up being a little bit smaller than I had originally anticipated, but I think all in all it ended up turning out pretty well. But we're going to go ahead and get kicked off here by kind of getting rid of the Orca Expedition station here. My goal with this, especially for the company, would definitely be to try to reuse this queue house right here, because we have a lot of queue that could just be repurposed and used again. There's no reason to try to demolish all of this and not reuse it. So that is going to be the goal, although the path layout within there is definitely going to be slightly modified. But unfortunately, it is going to require the demolition of the Orca Expedition station, which I actually kind of liked. It was a little bit more unique. I mean, it's not just a square box, which I have a bad feeling that the station for this new coaster is going to be. But we'll go ahead and get kicked off here anyway. We're going to go ahead and raise up these two tiles to make it a nice even square. And then we are going to do, much like Double Drop Falls at Houston Pleasant, I do want a dual load and unload station. So we have our middle there. So I want 3 station pieces. I want a block break in the middle. And then our 3 station pieces there. So I always want the first station to be this guy right here. Then as far as the transfer track for this ride goes, so we're going to do our 3 pieces there. I'm going to put a set of brakes right here in the middle. They don't really have to be set to anything. I'm going to set them... I'm just going to leave them at the default 18, actually. But I'm going to start our transfer track there. If you look at Double Drop Falls, I kind of went with a more basic... I went with the S-bend style, so the S-bend would slide over, and then you just be able to basically push the boat or train, whatever you want, forward. But for this one, and fun fact, I still don't have a name for it, so hopefully by the time I have it done, I have a good name. But you know, we're going to get there eventually. Let me get this... I'll level it up. Again, I apologize if I still sound kind of under the weather. I still am, just a little bit. Got a little bit of a cold going on. So if you can bear with me for that, we'll go ahead and get kicked off here. Yeah, let's go ahead and kind of flatten this out too. And we'll delve more into getting this to look more natural again in the time lapse, but just in the interest of getting the live comm done in a reasonable amount of time, we'll just flatten this out a little bit, and we will make it look all nice, and we'll get this all covered. Make it look more natural like it did before Orca Expedition existed. Do the same thing down there. Okay. So we're going to start very similar to how we kicked off on Double Drop Falls. So we're going to have the straight track there. And we're going to go straight into the first lift. I keep hitting the wrong thing. Vegetation. There we go. And then do the same thing on my other window. I apologize, guys. Just want to make sure I have my height correct. Okay, so we're at -10 right now. There we go. And we're going to go up to 25 feet. So we're going to have a nice 35-foot lift to get kicked off. And then I'm going to do 2 straight pieces here so the ARBs can end and the chain can kind of get the car pushed forward a little bit. We're going to do a right-hand turn. And then we're going to do a nice drop here. So unlike Double Drop Falls, because with Double Drop, you literally just go around the corner, you have the drop, and then a splashdown, and it's over. I wanted this one to be a little bit more in-depth. But at the same time, I still want this ride to be kind of family-oriented. Because the thing about... I mean, myself, I'm a coaster enthusiast. I love going to different parks and riding all kinds of different coasters. But I'm not a big fan of getting absolutely drenched. However, in my experience watching water rides, families are much more inclined to do that. So we're going to make this more a family style ride. And then right off this drop into the turn, we're going to go into a mid-course brake run just to kind of get the capacity a little bit higher than it would otherwise be, because capacity on this thing's not going to be great. And that's just I mean, it's realistic in terms of the actual liquid coaster by Premier Rides, but it's also kind of indicative of the in-game equivalent, because you have, 6-person boats that really are not going to be loaded very quickly. So we're going to drop down. We're going to head back up into a turn. Little bit of a small airtime pop maybe. Into a drawn out turn here. And we're going to go straight, and we're going to do a Double Drop Falls kind of airtime hill into the first splashdown. Because I really liked that about Double Drop Falls. I'm going to try to recreate that, and this is also where we're going to put the on-ride photo section. So we had one straight track, on-ride photo, another straight track, and then we went up into our splashdown. Right there. So we'll get that all sorted out. And then we're going to get a little bit pretty standard. So we're going to do an S-bend, a straight piece here, and then we're going to do a turn over, because I want this to be all water section. And initially I'd wanted there to be 2 water sections, so 2 splashdowns, but unfortunately, with the way this coaster ended up turning out, this is the only splashdown element on the ride. And the only reason that ended up being the case is because I wanted to have another big drop right here into a splashdown, but once you do a splashdown here, then you have to meander it all the way back over to the station. And that's not something that sounds very exciting or fun, so rather than do that, I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and end it with a coaster section. So we're going to hop into our second lift hill here, straight out of the water section, which we're going to have to get decorated to look nice. We're going to go up to 25 feet, so we're going to have 2 lift hills that are about the same height. This one would be a little bit longer just because it starts lower. For consistency with double drop in the first lift, Powder Keg also has something similar to this. When it drops off, it has a little bit of just a straight section of chain lift, a dip before it goes into the drop. So we're going to keep that consistent between double drop and this one. But we're going to do basically the same thing, except instead of turning right on this one, we're going to turn left. Into kind of a nice little helix here. And then this wide turn will fit nicely in there. We'll do another downward helix just to kind of get the boat a little bit more speed. And then we'll do another turn here. And then we're going to end this with a little bit of laterals, which might be a little bit odd. But that will do it right there. Actually, I'm off just a tiny bit. So hold on, I'm going to rebuild this section. The spirit is right, but I want to get just one more space here. So we do our S-bend other way. There we go. Our turn. And then right here. And hopefully this will serve two purposes, because you want to try to get as many boats on this as you can, because waiting in line for this would be miserable if you didn't have enough. So my goal was that maybe run 6 boats at any given time. However, the final break run ends up being a little bit smaller than maybe you would have liked. But I actually ended up being really happy with this layout. So we'll get our turn, one more straight piece, and then we have a turn into our final break run here. So we'll get our first block, 3 space, we'll get our second block here, and then we'll do kind of a gradual slowdown, because I don't know for sure, there's not a lot of info on Buzzsaw Falls. Buzzsaw Falls being the first Premier Ride liquid coaster. That one, I don't know if it had magnetic brakes or not. I'm pretty sure it did, but I know the second one, and I'm going to get this wrong, it's at Linnanmäki in Finland. Von Captius, something like that. If someone can give me a little bit of a sound out in the comments, I'd really appreciate that. But that was the second Premier Rides liquid coaster that opened in 2001. It actually lasted 16 years, so it made it to 2017. And it definitely looks like, from the small amount of images you can find online of Buzzsaw Falls, it looks like they learned a lot of lessons from that ride and took it over to the one at Linnanmäki. And that one was actually demolished to make room for Taiga, which looks like an awesome Intamin coaster. So there is our layout for our liquid coaster. Let's go ahead and just get the transfer track kind of in place here. But like I said, we're just going to do the one big piece that slides over. And since this is backed up, I don't really have to worry about it too much. And then, so in its current iteration, we have a load station and an unload station, just like we have on Double Drop. But with vehicle limits disabled, so we have block section. Oh, that reminds me. So actually, to help with capacity here, let's go ahead and remove this piece. We're going to add a block break in here. And I think I might also add, I don't really want to put it here right before the lift, but I might drop another one in here just so it can clear this block faster before it heads into this lift hill. But what I'll do is I'll make them hidden blocks. So we'll put another block break there. And we'll use our tile inspector to make them both invisible. And then what we'll do is we'll copy this track piece and paste it there, and then paste it here, but we'll have to turn it so it looks right. Just like that. So we have a hidden block break here under the water, then another hidden block break here before we head into the second lift. Which I think works pretty well. So now if we look at it, we have station 1, or load station, waiting, unload, waiting 2, final break right here. We have lift 2, we have trough 1, trough 2, and then lift. So that brings us to a decent amount of block sections. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I forgot about the mid-course break there. So we have 10 block sections. So I think running 6 boats would be pretty reasonable in that case. And I think what we'll do is we'll have space in the transfers for 10. So we'll put our station piece there. And I don't really, the nice thing about these rides is I really don't need to make the transfers too in depth. So I think I'll do 2 transfer stations. And I think I'll just leave these outside as well. So we have our 2 transfer stations there. The only thing I have to think about now, and this might be kind of tough, so I might end up putting a path underneath the transfer here, is how do you get the boats on after maintenance is done with them? And actually, thinking about it, I could do a bridge under lift 2 here. But that would be kind of difficult. I could do a bridge right here, actually. That I think is the way to go. So I'll put a bridge right here. I think I'll do the wooden railings just for now. But yeah, we'll build a bridge over this piece of water here. There you go. And that will allow, the maintenance team to get the boats over when they're done working on them during the off season. And we have the shop from Orca Expedition still here, so that's something that we could reuse. Make it a little bit easier. But I think we will just leave these outside, and that's something I might change my mind on, but for now I think we'll just say we'll leave them outside. But that is our layout. So we only have the one splashdown, but I think that's okay. We end with a coaster section just to keep the throughput a little bit higher. And I think this would be the most intense portion of the ride anyway, so I think that works out pretty well. But yeah, all in all, that's the layout. I think we're just about ready to hop on over to the build after I get this land done. But yeah, I think it looks pretty good. And I think it'll look even better after we get it fitted out. All right, and starting out the fitting out process, we're going to do a little bit more land modification and get started on our transfer track. I got through a couple iterations for the transfer just because I forgot to put a catwalk underneath it, as you can see there, and just in case a boat were to get stuck there, we want to make sure the guests can get off, because that would be pretty awful. I don't even really want to think about how an evacuation from in the trough down there would go. I think that would also sound pretty awful. But yeah, a lot of land modifications to get started here on this portion of it, and I knew that was coming. There's a lot of when I put the Orca Expedition building in, there was a lot that needed to be done to make sure it fit okay, but now we have to pay the ultimate price for that. And then while I start putting in the lift catwalk here, which, as you know, I've said it before and I'll say it every time I do it, it's a very long and tedious process, especially when you're involving water. And then the tile inspector to make sure all the railings, vanilla railings, look good. It's just a very long, tedious process. But while we're going through that, I will tell you guys the kind of beige track color does not end up staying. It took me forever to finally figure out a name for this, and I ended up using Google for help. And the name I ended up choosing, I do like, but it feels kind of generic. We ended up calling this water coaster Storm Surge, which I think is okay. I thought about going with the City Waterworks route again, like we did for the log ride at Houston Pleasant, but I wanted it to be more unique, and by doing that, I made it less unique in terms of the overarching industry, but within the Fun Corporation, it is a unique name. Trying to avoid the Fast and Furious, Hollywood Drifts, the Batman the Rides, the Superman Ultimate Flights, that kind of stuff, even though I already did it with Xenon. But I think with Xenon, it works okay, especially because those parks are so far apart. But I'm going to give a little bit of an update for what's going on for me while we put some of this stuff up. So this might be the last group of uploads I do for a while, so this should probably be coming out on a Wednesday, much like Electric Eel did, and then the actual POV should come out on Friday. Fun fact, as of recording this, Storm Surge still has not opened within the park because I haven't had the chance to advance it far enough. But these will probably be the last 2 uploads, potentially for a little bit. Just letting you guys know now, if you've watched this far, just so you're aware. I've got a big move coming up. So I'm moving from the Midwest over to the East Coast, and then it's going to take me a little bit of time to get set up. So I'll try to keep updated with posts on that and try to let you guys know when I get settled over in the new place out east. But in the background here, we're putting in some restricted area fence, getting the catwalk for that mid-course break done. And I think the mid-course break was a good idea. It's kind of early on, but there's only one mid-course. We got the 2 breaks, of course, inside the station, or not in the station, but the trough there. Should make it a little bit easier for the most part. But throughput definitely was a concern of mine on this ride, just because and I said it in the live comment, I'm going to say it again, the 6-person boats are going to be rough. I think I said I was going to try to run 5 boats, and I think I'm going to try to switch that to 6. One thing about running 6, though, with this ride is for the ride crew that would be operating it, you'd pretty much have to keep going because you really don't want to stack a boat on top of that second lift, because that's where the next boat will stack. Should you, for whatever reason, get a hold up in the station, hold up at the unload station, if the boat's all stacked, the next one to stack, especially if it's in the unload station, you're going to get a boat that stacks on that lift hill. You're going to get 2 boats that stack in the trough, and that's something you really would like to avoid. But moving on over to the station, I wanted to do it a little bit different than I have in the past. So we're going to cover the transfer tracks. We're going to put the 2 garage doors in so you can put the boats inside to work on them potentially. And then we do have that Orca Expedition maintenance shop we could reuse to actually, if you need to pull the boats off during the off season, you can. This is going to be a seasonal ride, so the boats would be able to be pulled off every year and then completely worked on. With it being a year-round park, of course, you'd have to pull the trains off the other rides too, but with a ride like Xenon 200, you could pull 1 train off at a time, rebuild it, put it back on, pull the next one off, rebuild it, pull a 3rd train off, rebuild it, and then you have all 3 trains left, hopefully in time for peak season. But in the case of Storm Surge here, with it being a water ride, we close them in November, at the beginning of November, and then we reopen them in May. So they have a nice off season to work on those boats, which is always helpful. So they'll always be ready. So I think we're gonna end up owning 6 boats for it. So we'll have the transfer be able to fit 6, 3 per side, and then the ride will run all 6 in ideal conditions, especially with how low capacity on the ride is going to end up being. Getting the queue repainted here. I made a couple of boo-boos with the splash boats there. I had to go back over and get those fixed to the right color. And I do it multiple times because I end up going back and changing the bottom color again. Because I didn't want the entire thing to be dark blue. I wanted a little bit of contrast with it. And then after all that's been repainted, it's time to go back underneath and get the queue worked on and into a acceptable spot. I'm not a big fan of the final queue layout, but it works. It's going to be a very long wait for anybody that wants to get on this thing, which is unfortunate, but due to the ride's nature, these water coasters are not known for having the highest throughput because you get, again, max 6 boats, 6 passengers. Not great. So 36 people total at a time on the ride. Not ideal. But I think the queue for this is actually a little bit shorter than the final for Expedition. Ended up being the Orca could run way more boats. But the nice thing about taking out Orca and reusing the boats is Timberland can actually use those. So we have more spare parts for that old style log flume. But once we get the queue done and in place, the shade structure's all there. The infrastructure's all there, which is really nice. So it's not too bad to get done. And if you notice, we still have 3 paths there just to kind of fill in, but there will be a purpose for those extra routes eventually. Something Kings Island, I believe, tested in 2010, which was eventually rolled out to that whole chain, but that's a teaser for the future. Probably won't be till the 2010s when that happens, though. But that should just about do it for Storm Surge. If you've made it this far, thank you very much for tuning in. I'm pretty happy with the way this ride ended up turning out. Doesn't use the show building for Orca, which there's kind of a reason for that. You run a water ride through the same building for 20 plus years. It's going to end up being pretty gross in there, but we're going to get the testing done. Our excitement rating ends up being 5.65, intensity 5.72, nausea 4.0, maximum height of 50 feet, top speed 36 miles an hour, and length of 2,536 feet. But that will do it for Storm Surge. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you in the next one, hopefully soon.